Between 1939 and 1945, our world was plunged into darkness. A firestorm engulfed the entire planet. It was a conflict so massive, so unbelievably brutal, it would forever change the course of human history. This is the story of World War II. The human cost is, well, it's a number so large it's almost meaningless. 70 million. 70 million lives lost. Soldiers, civilians, men, women, children. It's a staggering figure that demands we understand how could something like this ever happen? You see, the story of the Second World War doesn't really begin in 1939. No. To find its true beginning, you have to go back to the end of the First World War. It's there, in the ashes of a peace treaty meant to end all wars, that the seeds of an even deadlier conflict were sown. That peace treaty was the Treaty of Versailles, and for Germany, it wasn't a negotiation, it was a national humiliation. The nation was crippled by impossible debts, stripped of its military, its people left broken, angry, and starving. It created this perfect storm of desperation. And into that chaos, into that desperation, a voice emerged, Adolf Hitler. He was a captivating, powerful speaker who knew exactly how to tap into the anger and hopelessness of a nation. He promised to restore Germany's pride, to rebuild its strength, and to get revenge. And the German people, desperate for a savior, listened. By 1933, he was chancellor, and he moved fast, frighteningly fast. He didn't just lead the government, he became the government. The Nazi Party seized total control of everything: the army, the police, the media. Germany was being forged into a war machine. As Germany began to rearm, the world watched on with a growing sense of dread. Nations started to choose sides, and soon, two powerful military alliances would stand in opposition, drawing the battle lines for a conflict that would stretch across the entire globe. On one side, you had the Axis powers, an alliance built on aggression and conquest, led by Germany, Italy, and Japan. And on the other, the Allied powers, nations that would eventually band together to stop them. The stage was set. The spark finally hit the powder keg on September 1st, 1939. German forces stormed into Poland. In response, Britain and France declared war. The Second World War had begun. Germany didn't just start a war, they unleashed a terrifying new kind of warfare the world had never seen: Blitzkrieg, lightning war. This wasn't the slow, grinding trench warfare of the past. This was new. It was designed for one thing: pure, overwhelming, and rapid victory. It was a brutal three-punch combination. First, the sky would just erupt with bombers, shattering defenses. Then came the tanks, punching through the lines with incredible speed. And finally, waves of infantry poured in to crush any remaining resistance. Using this tactic, Poland fell in just a few weeks. The speed was just breathtaking and terrifying. From 1939 to 1941, the Nazi flag went up over Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, even France. It seemed like absolutely nothing could stop the German war machine. With the continent at his feet, Hitler turned his gaze to Great Britain. He unleashed his air force in a massive bombing campaign we now call the Blitz. Night after night, British cities burned. But the British people, they would not break. They refused to surrender. Frustrated, Hitler then made what was probably his most fateful decision. He turned east. He broke his pact with the Soviet Union and launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest land invasion in all of human history. Millions of men clashed on the Eastern Front in some of the most brutal fighting imaginable, especially in the frozen hell of Stalingrad. And while all this was happening, halfway across the world, another power was making its move. On December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, Japanese planes descended on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor. A sleeping giant had just been awakened. America's entry into the war was the turning point. Suddenly, the industrial might of the United States was thrown into the fight, joining the grit of the British and the sheer manpower of the Soviets. For the first time, the tide of the war began to slowly but surely turn. And you could see it happening. The German army was bled white at Stalingrad. Then the Allies pushed the Axis completely out of North Africa. The fortress that Hitler had built across Europe was starting to crack. And then came the blow that would break it wide open. June 6, 1944, D-Day. The largest amphibious invasion the world has ever seen. Thousands of ships, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, hitting the beaches of Normandy. A new front was open, the race to Berlin was on. By the spring of '45, it was over. The Allies were pushing from the west, the Soviets were closing in from the east, and deep in a bunker, underneath the ruins of Berlin, with the sound of Russian artillery shaking the ground, Adolf Hitler took his own life. Victory in Europe. But the war wasn't over yet. In the Pacific, Japan fought on with a terrifying fanaticism. The Allies faced a horrible choice, a bloody island-by-island invasion that could cost 1 million more lives. Or something else, something new. The decision was made to use a terrifying new weapon, the atomic bomb, to force a surrender. The first target was a city named Hiroshima. But even after that unimaginable devastation, Japan refused to surrender. So just 3 days later, a second bomb fell, this time on the city of Nagasaki. Faced with utter annihilation, the emperor finally surrendered. On August 15, 1945, the Second World War was over. When the silence finally fell, the world that emerged from the rubble was almost unrecognizable. The old empires were gone. Entire cities had been wiped off the map. Humanity had looked into the abyss and now had to figure out how to rebuild. Out of those ashes, a new reality took shape. The United Nations was created with the hope of preventing another world war. But the alliance that won the war quickly shattered. The world's balance of power had completely shifted, leaving two giants left standing. Because the end of World War II wasn't really the end of global conflict. It was the beginning of a brand new kind of war, a tense, ideological struggle fought with spies and threats between two new superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. It was the dawn of the Cold War.